Good evening and welcome to the Cedar Falls Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for this Wednesday, March 27th, 2019. Ms. Howard, could we have the roll?
Atkins.
Here.
Hartley.
Here.
Giarusso.
Here.
Overly. Holst.
Here.
Leeper.
Here.
Wingert.
Here.
Saul.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Thank you. Our first item of business tonight is the approval of the minutes from the March 13th, 2019 meeting. Do I have a motion or any corrections?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. We have a public comments period here. This would be for any items that are not on our regular agenda items tonight. So if there's anyone in the audience who would like to address the commission on anything, please come forward and state your name and address.
Thank you. I'm Ty Kimball. I am the president of Community Main Street in Cedar Falls. And I'm going to read a statement to you that our director, Carol Lilly, had sent out on behalf of Community Main Street. She fortunately, she's on vacation and couldn't be here, so I'm representing her. The intent of the statement by Community Main Street is to let some of the newer commission members know about past action Community Main Street has taken in support of downtown challenges and for our desire to continue working on district challenges. Our comments pertain to the general review of any project within the district, and our feedback is not intended to be a statement for or against any specific project within the district. This is Carol's letter that she asked me to read. Members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the discussion during the last P&Z meeting regarding the new downtown development brought up some very good points by those in attendance. As you make decisions regarding the future of downtown, your role as commission members is important to the continued success of the district. We appreciate your willingness to ask questions and consider the ordinances as well as the various viewpoints to make thoughtful decisions. During the past 31 years, the investments made, both financial and through sweat equity, has created our vibrant, magnetic downtown community. This collective effort produced an atmosphere where investing in the restored center of the city has become highly desirable. Parking oftentimes has been part of the discussion. Since some of you are newer to the commission, I am providing you a short background of Community Main Street's effort to improve parking in recent years. Since early 2012, when significant construction projects in the downtown district were announced, members of the downtown community recognized the positive impact the projects would bring to the district and wholeheartedly welcomed the news. Community Main Street soon recognized that along with growth, there would be challenges to face, including parking availability. In May of that year, Community Main Street sent a letter to the city supporting the economic development in the district. In it, we respectfully requested that throughout the planning process for future development, consideration would be taken for increased burden on existing public parking facilities and how such large-scale development would affect the district. Lack of available parking would not only impact the existing businesses, which have collectively invested millions of dollars in our downtown, but could negatively affect the success of the proposed developments themselves. Although not part of the city's actual parking inventory, the lots along State Street were frequently full and used regularly by downtown patrons. Privately held lots were also used after hours, a practice that continues today. After sharing concerns and submitting a request to council and staff to jointly fund a professional parking study in 2012, it was determined a more cost-effective route would be to conduct the study internally. At the direction of the City Council, members of the city staff were asked to work with representatives from Community Main Street to research parking trends and develop a set of recommendations to improve downtown parking. The result of the task force was the 2015 parking study report, a year-long assessment of parking conditions in the district. Following the report results, Community Main Street volunteers and staff spent 2 years actively addressing the short-term priorities identified in the report and funded all costs associated with those recommendations. Fast forward to 2018, and the downtown development projects are going strong, with more on the horizon. A new parking study was recently completed, and Community Main Street is pleased the city is moving forward with improvements to the parking system. It is important to note shared parking in private lots is one of the recommendations. This practice has been underway for many years due to the generosity of the private lot owners. Shared parking is often referenced during planning and zoning meetings. During the planning and zoning meeting of March 13th, one of the commission members asked about the number of spots that would be lost when Wells Fargo lot was no longer available. The city response was a bit confusing. Since it was not part of the public parking system, the loss of those spots was not of consideration. How can one consider private parking lot parking as favorable in one instance, but when it is no longer available, the parking loss is not to be considered? In our opinion, if private parking is going to be considered as part of the parking system, both gains and losses due to the private sharing agreements must be carefully considered. One of the strengths of our downtown community is the business mix. The balance of retail, dining, nightlife, office, service, and residential makes our downtown a destination and community asset. Parking is a major component of the equation, for without adequate parking availability, there cannot be a sufficient number of patrons to allow success of downtown businesses, both new and existing. Well-defined available parking options and safe, secure walkability is of utmost importance to the retail and restaurant sectors. Community Main Street continues to fully support economic development projects within the district, but as development continues, protecting the opportunity for all business types to succeed is essential for Cedar Falls to retain its unique personality and thriving city center. And we all know that successful businesses are what drive associated property and sales tax revenue. The current professionally done parking study has provided an updated set of recommendations for which we are extremely grateful. We look forward to the establishment of the parking committee as recommended and hope that planning and zoning members and representatives from Community Main Street are included on the team. To provide a successful conclusion, we believe the expertise that both Community Main Street and P&Z participation would provide would be of great value to the city staff. We are confident that if we, working together, use the data collected in the parking study and carefully weigh the pros and cons of the recommendations, we can develop a district-wide plan that adequately addresses the needs of both our current and future customers, employees, and residents. In conclusion, Community Main Street remains hopeful that you will continue to consider the serious concerns about parking availability in your role as a commissioner. We greatly appreciate your willingness to serve as a planning and zoning commissioner and for the ongoing support of the downtown district by the city of Cedar Falls and the role it plays in making the district a great America Main Street. Respectfully, Carol Lilly, Executive Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Ty. Anyone else in the audience who would like to address the commission? This is a public comment period, not relative to any of the items on our agenda. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing portion and we will move to old business. Our first item is the Central Business District Overlay District River Place 2 Site Plan. And who's introducing that? Iris is introducing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holst. So River Place Properties is proposing to build 2 new mixed-use buildings downtown at the previous Wells Fargo site, pictured here on this slide. The site is located at the intersection of East 3rd Street and Main Street, as well as the East 3rd and State Street intersection. The property is zoned C3 commercial and does fall within the Central Business District overlay. The site plan review for this project, as it's in the Central Business District overlay, does require Planning and Zoning Commission review and City Council review and approval. I'd like to note that this project has been in front of the Community Main Street Design Board, and they've been working very closely to present this design with you today, and as well as the last meeting. As I noted, this item was first introduced at the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And as that presentation went into detail on the proposal for this meeting, I will go through the highlights and touch on really anything new with the proposal. More information can be found in the staff report, and if desired by the commission, I can delve into detail on those other items as well, and the applicant is here too to answer any questions. A new building is being proposed on both sides of the alley. The building 1, shown on the left side of the alley, 302 Main Street, is a proposed 3-story building with commercial and office on the main floor and office space on the second. Also proposing a drive-through there off the alley. Building 2, shown on the right of the alley, 123 East 3rd Street, is a proposed 6-story building with commercial on the first floor, office on the second, and residential on the 3rd through 6th floors. They're proposing a total of 25 2-bedroom condominiums. And then there's a note that they are proposing underground parking, so below the 123 East 3rd Street property. And they are proposing a separate ramp that will go onto the second floor and take up a good amount of that. So they are proposing on-site parking. C3 zoning does apply to this property, and it meets the requirements. The uses being proposed are permitted. Setbacks are not required in the C3 zoning district, so the building is built to the property lines. There are some exceptions to this. For the 123 East 3rd Street building, that's building 2, the blue image there on the right. The first floor will be set back along the alley 4 feet, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about why that setback in the next few slides. And newly, this is different from the previous discussion from the last meeting, to comply with CFU recommendations, the second and third floors above the drive-through have been set back 7 feet to ensure access to that transformer that's required by them to be there. I'd like to note that this will not affect the East 3rd Street facade, as that step back or recession of those 2 floors would not happen until behind that stairway. So it starts, the image shows, kind of behind that front facade. So it does not affect the facade of the building. The district does not have an on-space landscaping requirement, so that is met. And the applicant has been coordinating with the city on sidewalk reconstruction and making sure that it will correspond with our downtown streetscaping plan and ensure that we coordinate for our 2020 planned reconstruction of East 3rd Street. 302 Main Street is purely commercial and office space, so no parking is required for that building per code. 123 East 3rd Street provides the needed 50 on-street parking spots for the residents, on-site parking spots for the residents, which was required. And in addition to that, we'll provide 11 new on-street parking spaces for public parking. The proposal meets and exceeds the parking requirements for our current district. WGI had conducted a parking analysis. We reviewed it a little bit at the last meeting, but I just would like to cover those same kind of highlights again today. Looking at the proposal during the seasonal peak parking demand period, which is during the holiday season in December, it is estimated by them that 82 to 93 spaces would be needed, depending on the uses within the building. 61 parking spaces are being provided with this project. and additional parking available at the existing River Place lot at all times of the day and weekends are available. So in conclusion, WGI concluded that there is sufficient developer-controlled private parking to support the proposed project. They also noted that the 11 additional public parking spaces will benefit the entire district. 302 Main Street has a proposed drive-through off the alley, as I noted earlier. It will service a financial institution. The proposal meets the stacking requirements of the code, which for this type of use would require 3 stacking spaces for cars. The circulation of the proposed drive-through would be south to north with a teller window. I'd like to note that the entrance of the underground parking for 123 East 3rd Street will also be off the alley. And then in response to our initial concerns to traffic generation, the applicant has provided that 4-foot setback off the alley, and with that, a no-build easement, which would effectively allow for 2-way traffic circulation on the north half of the alley. Prior to this, it was a 1-way alley, north to south. Even with the ability to turn the north half of the alley into a two-way lane, which does help considerably with our concerns, staff is still concerned with the new traffic generation from these 2 proposed buildings and the potential congestion and points of conflict that it may create. So to help alleviate those concerns, the applicant has agreed to include conditions about the drive-through in their development agreement, and we're currently working with them to draft that language. This will help with any modifications that we need or will see needed if any issues do arise due to that drive-through. There's also an understanding that if there's ever a change of use, so if that main tenant using that drive-through is no longer a financial institution, that use of the drive-through would be discontinued. However, of course, it could continue if reviewed and approved by Planning and Zoning and City Council. So we are currently working on that development agreement. Proportion of a building is required as a point of review in this review process. The C3 maximum height that is permitted is 165 feet. The proposed Main Street building stands at 42 feet, and the proposed 3rd Street building stands at 78. Both buildings are proposing setbacks or step-backs to visually reduce the height of the buildings. This is when the upper floors are receded from you or set back from the side, so that they're not at the pedestrian level. 302 Main Street proposes a partial setback along the Main Street side, and 123 East 3rd Street is proposing step-backs at the 2nd floor and then again at the 5th floor. So for perspective, the 6th floor would be effectively 20 feet from that sidewalk side, so it would not be visible at all at the street level, and even at a distance, it would be reduced from view. So here are some visuals of what that would look like at the street level. .302 Main Street, as noted before, will be 3 stories, but it will appear to be mostly 2-story from the Main Street side. This will complement the existing 2-story buildings along that Main Street stretch. 123 East 3rd Street will be the tallest building in this area at 6 stories within the downtown, with the next largest building being 401 Main Street and the other River Place buildings located further to the north. Here's a height comparison provided by the applicant of those buildings. The applicant has made efforts to align horizontal elements within the proposed building to visually reduce the height, and the proposed step-backs also on the upper levels do a good job of doing this as well. Staff finds that overall, the proposed building design will create a well-proportioned and visually interesting building with good street frontages, and the proposed design meets the intent of the design standard for building proportion. Design standards and site plan review also cover the categories listed on this slide. At the last meeting, these items were reviewed in detail and are also available in the staff report. In summary, all the requirements have been met for these items in the proposal. Again, if there are any questions on these items, I'm happy to answer them if they come up during the discussion period. And as well, the applicants here too, if there's any further discussion on these. With that, staff recommends approval of the proposed site plan and building designs for both 302 Main Street and the 123 East 3rd Street property. Thank you.
Thanks, Iris. Would the applicant like to make any comments? Please come forward. Your name and address.
Okay, Mark Kittrell, Eagle View, the developer. My address is 402, or what the heck is it, 208, number 408. I live downtown. You sort of lose track of these things. I'm here to speak, obviously, on behalf of the project. I guess I want to start out by first thanking the Community Main Street folks for their comment and all the work. I think this is the 14th time we've been in front of this group, so it's been really a joy to get, I think, a lot more involvement from the community, a lot more interest from people in the project. I think the new changes that have happened with the overlay, the new parking study that's been done, all of those things are a tremendous benefit. And I think the quality of the project that we're happy to bring in front of you today reflects that. I think it's been a real joy. It's no secret I'm getting older and grayer as I'm also presenting to you guys. This was a project that I would tell you wasn't on our original agenda. It is outside of the front door of what we've done. We've been very pleased with all the investment that we've been able to make. We've got a lot of community banks. We've got a lot of people that are invested in the project with us. It's a real joy to really be able to sort of look at the front door of that project and bring this kind of a project forward. I'd also want to say it's kind of one of those, it's nice to be successful. We've, not always, I think, as a community, been as interested in our downtown as what we are now. And there's a lot of activity and actually very few spaces left. We're kind of in that end game. So I know there's a visioning step that's coming up here, I think, beginning next week. And we're going to be working with staff and a lot of consultants and you folks as well on what we'll do with the rest of the spaces down there. So we're happy to put this one in front of everyone. I think we're happy to answer whatever questions you were, but I just wanted to speak and thank everyone. I think this is a really, really high quality project and we've got a lot of interest in it, particularly from old folks like me that really find a lot of the vibrancy and enjoy the urban living opportunities. So we'll look forward to that. Any questions, we'll take them from there.
Thank you, Mark. At this time, I'll open the floor to any public comment. Anybody who would like to address the commission on this project and invite you to come forward and state your name and address. Seeing none, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for discussion and action.
It's like a nice community project. I know there's some concerns about the parking, but it seems to meet the requirements that are laid out before us. So it's a good project.
I just have a question. I'm a little torn, and I know Ty said at the beginning of his speech that this is not for or against, but I'm curious to know the stance of Community Main Street and their support of this project. I think that's a big key to this, and it'd be nice to see that we move this forward, that Community Main Street feels the same way.
Is there a formal position that Community Main Street has taken on the project?
Yes, some questions for me? Oh, okay. I'll try to answer.
Yeah, my question was just, I know you stated at the beginning of your letter that that letter was not in support or against the project itself or any particular project, but I'm curious, is Community Main Street in support of this project?
Am I personally?
No, the Community Main Street.
Community Main Street as a
Community Main
board,
Street.
as a...
Has there been a formal?
I think the board's main view of what's going on in downtown Cedar Falls is behind economic development. And we are cognizant of recommendations and comments that are made by the public as well as those from the developers. And we don't want to be in a position where we're taking sides one way or the other. We see that things are being done properly. We are proud of the fact that the city has stepped forward with the parking study and is adding, in our opinion, significant parking spots. You know, this development itself is adding spots that weren't there before, as well as exceeding what they're required to do, you know, per the planning and zoning regs. So we're just in full support of economic development that's going on and being cognizant of the fact that we need to be aware and keep working forward for more opportunities to create more parking spots.
Do you personally think this has enough parking?
I do. You know, I have a business that's right across the street to the north from this project, and I personally have no objections to what's going on. Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ty.
Anything else? I'm sorry, my hearing's not real good, and so I apologize for not hearing what you asked me for.
Thanks.
Any other comments? I just to kind of follow up on the parking. I mean, the parking is perplexing to me in a way because I mean, the reality is that, you know, building on the lot that is a private lot, but serves a very public function right now. And, you know, that's a little bit of disconcern that there is going to be some loss of, you know, it's not a great number, but because there's some offset to additional parking, but it certainly will affect that area. And just anecdotally, you know, I've heard a lot of comments in the last few weeks about people who think downtown has a parking problem, and that's not good to have that perception out there because perception becomes reality at some point. And so, you know, that's an ongoing concern. However, you know, you're looking at it, the parking requirement is parking for the residents, and that's been met. So it seems that, you know, everything is in compliance with our ordinance.
I guess I would just ask an additional question in regards to the parking, because that does seem to be the big issue, that we're recognizing and we have the parking for the residents. And my understanding from reading through this, that the expectation for the commercial part of the building that parking could be served by existing parking with River Place. So it's private parking that is not fully used, that the expectation would be that these commercial activities, they would park in existing parking and would not take away parking for retail and restaurant. Would that be a fair statement? Because that's my concern, is that we would be taking parking away from those people that are coming down to Cedar Falls downtown to shop, to eat, and they would choose to do their business somewhere else, and that we need to protect the existing retailers and restaurant owners in the community.
So I think
Does that make sense, my
yes,
question?
and I think that's one of the things that the parking impact study took into account, is that during the parking study, what it showed, they did 4 parking counts different times of the day, and I think River Place also did their own parking counts to their existing parking area, and what it showed is that our current residential parking requirement overprescribes parking for the residents, so they do have considerable available parking in their existing parking lots. And then because the River Place controls their own private parking and can control that supply and issue permits in their lots for the businesses that are going to locate in their buildings, that's one of the reasons that the WGI report said that there's sufficient parking here to support the whole project, even though it's not a requirement in the zoning ordinance to have private off-street parking for commercial.
So I have a question. Let's say this gets approved, and I love it. It's a great improvement on what we had there, so I really appreciate that. But the next project comes along, and they don't, by ordinance, they don't have to provide parking but we have another, something like this come along, and they don't have to provide parking, and they don't have 89 or 69 other private spots to offer, then what do we do?
So I think that's one of the reasons that, that we did the parking study, was to look at both short-term solutions to the parking issues downtown, and then look to the future about those longer-term, more permanent shared parking options in the public parking system, with the idea that we are then moving forward to getting enough parking downtown to support not only existing, but future development. So that'll be a partnership between the city and all the different stakeholders downtown. We just completed that parking study. I think we are moving forward to form those committees. There's already kind of a plan to implement some of those short-term solutions, and then looking forward to those longer-term solutions as well. So,
But as I understand it, that most of it says we need to share private parking lots with public, and that's what people are going around, they're trying to make agreements with property owners who own private parking lots to open them up to the public after 5 or whatever. In this project, we are taking away private parking, which ordinarily, if this building were not being built, we would be asking the owner of that parking lot to share it with the public. Is that correct?
so that is one of the short-term, sort of temporary fixes. In other words, the goal would be to get enough public parking available in a downtown setting that everybody could share. But we might as well use all the tools in the toolbox. And so that's one of the short-term interim solutions, is to get agreements from private property owners. I don't think that those agreements are intended to foreclose the private property rights of a property owner to use their property to generate revenue for their businesses. So, of course, those private agreements are entered into in good faith. And so I think that it is an interim solution that we're looking at. It's not intended to be a permanent fix to the issues in the downtown.
Okay, and I understand and I agree with you, but I have not heard any proposed long-term solutions. All I've heard is we've added a few parking spots on State Street, we add a few here and there, we changed our current public parking lots to be more efficient, but I have not heard any long-term parking solutions to make sure that Cedar Falls has enough parking to support its current retail and commercial businesses. I'm not saying that I would vote no against this project based on that, but it continually boggles my mind that we talk about sharing private lots with public, but now we're taking away a private one, and I still haven't heard a long-term solution from the city. But
So those long-term solutions were listed in the parking study, and of course, long-term solutions take a while to be realized. So I think there are people working behind the scenes on all those solutions and figuring out a path forward from that parking study and those recommendations. So
can you name 2 of the long-term options that was presented in the study?
So I don't have the parking study in front of me with all those solutions. It is available on the city's website, and we're happy to have a larger discussion about that if we want to put that on the agenda for a future discussion if the commission wants it. But I think the item on the agenda tonight is whether or not this proposal meets the city requirements. So I think it's a valid question, and we can explore that further.
I would like to have that added to our agenda because the details of the long-term solutions I haven't really seen in that parking study. I've seen a lot of short terms and possibilities, but not really.
So perhaps we can put that on agenda as a sort of an informational session about, getting the people that are working on those parking solutions here, so they can answer them directly.
Great, thank
That
you.
would be good. I do have one other question I think maybe staff can address. When I was reading through, and I'm sorry I wasn't here at the prior meeting, so I missed out on the initial conversation, but I noted that stormwater retention is not required, but storm water quality is required, and I didn't know what is the requirement and what's being, that seems to be an area that has not been fully resolved at this point, or maybe it has. Can you maybe?
So those kind of the details, the engineering details, but the plan, and I believe that maybe the applicants can answer that question better than I, because I'm sure they have the experts here tonight. But from what I understand, they're planning to put hydrodynamic separators, which is intended to filter out the water, so it's water quality, so that it's filtering out the debris and that sort of thing before that water gets into the city's storm sewer system. And it will be installed on site. But if you want to know the details, I'm sure there's somebody that knows a lot more than
Okay.
I do about that.
That is being addressed with a acceptable solution. Okay.
Do you have the total commercial space? It's not commercial, but office space that's being part of this project?
It should be listed in the staff report, but I don't have it in front of me at the moment. The slide says there are, and maybe the applicant has those numbers readily available, but it looks like they're proposing on the 123 East 3rd Street building about 5,000 square feet of potential office space. And then on the First Main Street building, we're looking at about 15,000 office space on the second floor.
So it's 20,000 roughly?
Yes.
The office space is the only thing that really comes to mind when I think about the parking on there. I typically don't have an issue with parking on that, but those people are there 8 to 5, and they have the shared lots over in the other River Place development. And I kind of want to know if they are, they have the ability to park there, but I think it would almost be responsible to require them to park there. If there's some way to, and maybe you have that in your plan, but as simple as a large green dot on their window sticker or something like that, if that's, you see that, they're parked out 8 to 5, something like that. But maybe you can tell me about that.
Able to answer that question?
Kayla Toll with Eagle View Partners. We actually do have required stickers and passes. So we do have a sticker that we require all of our tenants to put on their back windshield or back bumper. If, for instance, they have a visitor or a guest, we do also provide with visitor parking, and it is a requirement in both of our residential and commercial leases, which would include office, that they are required to park in our private parking lot. That is, keep in mind that's a shared lot then, so you see a lot of that turnover around 4:30 or 5 o'clock when our office residents are heading home, and our office tenants are heading home, and our residents are coming home. So, any other questions on that?
Do you
Yeah.
have a number of parking spaces that you think would be a requirement for that office space?
I did a little bit of research, and you can be anywhere between 150 and 250 square feet per user of that office square footage. And you guys as architects might know a little bit better.
Mark is shaking his head yes, that's accurate.
So if you do that, that's 80 people on 20,000 square feet if you go to the 250 per person. So that's, if there's 91 there, if I recall right, roughly.
I don't know what the density in their office is going to be. All we have is the parking study that we can go off of, and he was aware that that amount of office space was going in.
Perfect. And one other question I had was, I don't expect you guys to say what the user will be for the financial institution, but I think it'd be nice to know if maybe they knew how many drive-through users they had per day, if they know that number.
They did not track their numbers. The best they could do was say what the teller who serves both the drive-through and the front desk, and they said they do roughly 170 transactions a day.
Okay.
So that's split between the two, but they didn't track them individually, and they didn't track times.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think there are some legitimate parking concerns downtown, there's no question about that. I feel as it pertains to this project that the parking makes sense. My concern about the office space was shared, and I think the language in the lease is reassuring if that practice will be enforced. The only thing that I keep coming back to is that drive-through. I understand the reason to make it two-way is to ensure that delivery trucks are able to service the buildings to the south. So the So that makes some sense. I guess where I see a potential area of confusion is that alley is a one-way alley, but there's one spot where there's an exception. I don't know that my concern here would affect the overall plans, but just want it noted that there should be some thought given to signage perhaps, very specifically is to discourage regular traffic from going southbound on that alley.
So I think there will have to be some signage to note when it goes to one-way. And of course, allowing traffic to go both directions whenever it's available is a good thing because it helps distribute the traffic. So I don't know if we would put up a sign saying that you can't go that direction because that would be quite confusing to drivers. But obviously, if there's a truck parked there that people can't drive to the south, clearly that will be, people will not drive to the south because they won't be able to get through. So the whole purpose of creating that extra space was to provide an alternative option so that people could go either direction if it was free both to the south and to the north. But then when there is something that's blocking the alley for a delivery truck and that sort of thing, it could circulate. People can get out. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm just wondering about how much congestion there might be with cars turning down to pass through that may need to make a U-turn and don't have the room to do that. Maybe that's not any different than the condition currently, perhaps.
That is the current condition. So,
Yeah.
so it's a one-way alley. In fact, all the alleys that are east of Main Street, they all have a north-south circulation. So that is a general pattern that's been that way for many
Right.
years. So people will be used to that pattern.
Well, but the only difference, I think, is what Kyle's pointing out is now people can come in from the north to get in there, and then you get yourself trapped, versus right now it says one way, so you go around the, right? Am I right on that?
So you can only still come in from the north side.
Okay, is
It's
that,
a southbound alley.
It's a southbound alley.
Right.
okay,
So you wouldn't have been able, you shouldn't have been able to or been trying to come from the south
To the north.
on, I guess, 4th Street
okay.
anyway.
I was thinking it was the other way around.
Yeah.
My bad.
I guess I would share Kyle's concern. I think the drive up is optimistic. So can you explain, there's some language in the development agreement, can you explain the mechanism for if this doesn't work, what happens?
So we're still working out the details of what that would be, but I think the idea was there'd be a number of options, whether there need to be additional signage, whether we need to look at the hours of operation of the drive-through if it becomes a problem, or if it's a problem of stacking out, we don't want the cars to stack out across the public sidewalk. So I think looking at modifying the design, modifying the signage, making sure that that we can control that. I don't know if we can anticipate. One of the reasons that financial institutions have a lower stacking requirement than like a restaurant or something, I think it would really be a concern if it was something like a coffee shop or a restaurant drive-through. There's probably just not as much traffic, so many per hour on a drive-through. So I guess the question is whether we believe that we're willing to take and allow that to occur and see how that goes and look for solutions if it becomes a problem.
The only question I would have about that is the measure as to when it becomes a problem, and if there's a way to put that in the language. And I don't have an answer or even a suggestion. It's just a thought.
Trigger is,
Will we be revisited with that language? Will it come back to us at all before it goes, or will that just be city council's?
well, we'll work through that with the development agreement, and that would be
City
reviewed
council.
at the city council.
I guess I'd like to just see some language in that development agreement that has some teeth in it if it doesn't work. I don't want these surrounding business owners to be penalized if it
If it's non-functional.
Maybe it'll work. Maybe that's fine.
There's probably some peak times to it, obviously, as in anything, but if you break it down per hour, that's really only 10 cars per hour. If you take half, if 170 of the patrons going through, half of it may be.
I hope to address maybe some of this.
Can you name and address, please?
Jesse Lizer with Emergent Architecture. So our stacking, we're showing three cars comfortably. The size of the vehicle we used was a Super Duty pickup truck, so larger than normal. If you do kind of show the diagram, there can actually be up to 5 or 6 standard size cars that could stack in that area before it would impede out into the sidewalk space. From the distance from the sidewalk to the street, you're about 25 feet away, so there should be ample room for, I guess it's off the screen, but the arrows, there's actually about 50 feet from where the car pulls out of the drive-through to where the street is, and about 25 feet where it gets to the sidewalk. So doing the diagrams, you can get 6 to 8 cars stacked in there before it even becomes an issue where a car cannot get around going one of the 2 directions. And again, those are standard size cars, but we wanted to do the study based on a larger pickup truck, if knowing that's what many people drive. So are there any other questions on that?
Thank you.
All right.
One last question I have is, who patrols and enforces those stickers on those vehicles?
Kayla again. We have a maintenance staff that patrols all of our parking lots, and then we have stickers or tickets. I should have brought those too, but we do have tickets that we issue if we're seeing any issues with people not parking in the correct spots.
Do you have any idea how many tickets you gave out in 2018?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I'd have to look at our numbers. I don't know, not too many. I mean, really, our residents are pretty good. We go through a move-in checklist when people move into their spaces or move into their units as well, and talk through as far as where the public parking is. They know not to park in the public spots, and then we go and walk the lot and just show them where those are. Mind you, we also have 2 garages in the 250 State and the 300 State building, so we show them where their spots are. I mean, we're very thorough in talking about parking with our residents and our commercial tenants as well.
Thank you. That's really the only concern I had. I think it's a great project.
Any other comments, or I'll entertain a motion if there is one?
I move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Do we need to put the condition on there? But it's already going to be in there, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we don't need to add a condition. Perfect.
Okay. Any other thoughts? See none, we'll go ahead and vote. And we have all ayes on that, so that motion carries. That will go to the city council. Do we know when? Staff, any idea?
April, probably.
Probably the 15th of April, yep. Okay. So, thank you, everybody, on that item. Our next item of business is MPC Development Procedures Agreement Amendment for 2910 McLean Drive. And who's introducing that one tonight? Iris, you're doing all that heavy lifting today.
Let me just get to the right slide. So Jim Benda is requesting to amend a development procedures agreement with the City of Cedar Falls for the properties at 2910 McLean Drive, 2920 McLean Drive, and 5609 University Avenue. These 3 properties are located at the University Avenue and McLean Drive intersection, and they're outlined here on yellow on this aerial image. These properties are located in the MPC zoning district with R1 residential to the south and north, S1, so shopping to the west, and then 2 other MPC zoned properties next to it along the east. This item was first introduced at the last P&Z meeting, so I'll just kind of run through the points of this proposal. The MPC, Major Thoroughfare Planned Commercial Zoning District, requires that when it is rezoned, the submittal has a detailed site plan and development agreement. The intent of the MPC zoning district is to permit the development of a mixture of residential, institutional, office, and commercial land uses in a manner that will result in minimal negative impacts upon adjacent low-density residential areas. These 3 properties were originally rezoned from R1 residential to MPC in January of 2017. The approved site plan for these 3 lots are shown here. This site plan and then the development agreement that accompanied it stated that these 3 homes could only be redeveloped as a restaurant, so demolished and then 1 building for restaurant built with a parking lot. The applicant is requesting to amend the previously approved site plan and development procedures agreement to allow these 3 residential buildings to continue to exist as single-unit residences or allow these buildings to be wholly or partially converted into commercial businesses or offices that are permitted within the MPC zoning district. The proposed amendment would follow the development pattern of existing MPC zoning in the area along the stretch of University Avenue. The 2 MPC properties to the east, 5601 and 5529 University Avenue, were both developed in this fashion, with the existing residential buildings being converted into commercial uses as a hair salon and as a chiropractor office, respectively. The proposed development statement, development procedures agreement, does have a number of terms listed here on this slide. I'll just go through and quickly read them to you. One being that no new access points to University Avenue be permitted, so those existing approaches be maintained as they are. The site changes necessary to serve commercial uses would be allowed, such as widening the curb cuts, adding parking and landscaping to meet zoning requirements. And that also includes, minor signage and maybe changing the appearance of the exterior a little bit. So that would require just a staff level review for those minor changes. They wouldn't require P&Z review. If changes are proposed beyond just those type of things, it would be a new site plan would be required and the agreement would be amended, and then those would have to go through Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council for approval. At the time of development, also missing sidewalk segments must be constructed. Currently, we have sidewalk along University Avenue, but there is a gap along that McLean Drive section, so that just kind of covers the infill for those 2 when those develop. The proposal provides a good transition into the lower density residential areas around it and does provide opportunities for small neighborhood-serving businesses that will not generate as much traffic noise or congestion as other larger commercial uses. So staff is in support of the proposed amendment and recommends approving the development procedures agreement with the City of Cedar Falls for those 3 properties and then moving that to council.
Thank you, Iris. Would the applicant like to address the commission? Anybody from the applicant? Seeing none, I'll open it for any public comment. Anyone here who would like to comment on this item tonight? Seeing none, we'll close it to public comment. I'll bring it to the commission for discussion or an action. Motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any comments? I would just say I think it's pretty consistent with what was done there prior from what I could tell, and it seems like a pretty reasonable approach to using that because they're not ideal residential properties the way they sit. So Anything else? We'll go ahead and vote. And we have all ayes and one abstention on that item. That passes. So that moves forward to the city council also. Upcoming meeting, is that the likely scenario again?
We're actually hoping to turn it around and get on this Monday's meeting, so April 1st.
Right, okay, so those who are interested can know that. That completes our old business calendar for tonight. Under new business, we have two new items which are being introduced. Both of them are related to Ashley Home Store. One is a district site plan, S1 district site plan review, and the other is preliminary and final plat. Shane, you're introducing this, and you're going to kind of run the two together just for efficiency's sake, and so we don't have to repeat everything. And this is just introductory at this meeting. Plans to take action at the next one, correct?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Olson. Yeah, I'll run through them both at the same time because they correlate well with each other. One's a site plan, one's a plat, so I'll just kind of run through them both and then ask for questions afterwards. So first is the request for an S1 district site plan review. This is at the former Yonkers store at College Square Mall. This property is zoned S1 Shopping Center District. For any major development projects, redevelopment projects, it does require review by Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council, so similar to other zoning districts where that's required. The mall was purchased back in 2015 by College Square Realty, and if the commission members remember, back in 2016, there was a number of outlots along the north side of the mall that were part of the mall that were split off by a subdivision in 2016, which did just remain then the mall with the one singular lot on its own. And that was in 2016. Approximately a year, I guess I'm not sure the exact date, the Yonkers closed their store, and it's been sitting vacant, and the proposed buyer of it would like to transform this into a new Ashley Home Store. The developer also recently in 2017 built a new industrial distribution center in our industrial park and has been looking for a site in Cedar Falls. So we think when this property became available, the buyer was very interested in it. So that's where we're moving today. So again, the property is zoned S1 Shopping Center District. Again, it's along with the site plan, they'll be asking to subdivide off a portion of the mall lot for their development. So I just want to run through some of the site plan elements that we look at as far as reviewing the site plan. Again, so what they're looking to do, the existing store is a little over 83,000 square feet. They would propose to put a 15,526 square foot addition onto it. As noted before, it was a large retail store. It'll be a furniture store, so similar type retail use, for a total store size of a little over 99,000 square feet. With that addition going on to the front of the store, if you notice that Yonkers store sits back just a little further than the main mall building. So with this addition, it would more line up the front of this store with the rest of the mall property. With the parking, when they subdivide this off, or with the next request of the subdivision, this lot would have 451 parking stalls on that lot. For furniture stores, the parking requirement would be 119, plus it's one parking stall for every 2 employees. We don't know the employee number yet. They haven't given that to us, but with 451 stalls, they're in excess of 300 stalls, so they should be fine with that. Also, with looking at the parking, then you're looking at what the mall has. If this does get subdivided, then you look at what the existing mall has for stalls. They've provided some information from the mall that shows that there would be 1,317 stalls remaining on the actual mall, the remaining mall site. And based on information given to us from the mall about the square footages and the uses in the mall, 1,171 would be required. So the mall would still have adequate parking after this, if this project is approved for subdivision. Looking at a couple of the site details, one of the things is with the existing, when the mall platted off those 9 lots, we entered into a development agreement with the mall where they were going to do some improvements, some landscaping, some parking lot repairs, some sidewalk additions, and one of the things that they did was provided cross-access easements, and you can see the lighter shaded easement is what the existing easement is now. It's basically the existing drive areas on the mall. Since they're going to be building that addition on the north side, they're going to have to relocate that easement. And so the darker shaded on the map here is showing where they're going to propose to relocate that drive and that easement. And then also there is an existing drive that leads to the north up to that frontage road. They do plan to remove that and replace that with just a parking area. And so what they want to do is they would like to relocate that access easement further to the east a little bit to more align with the north-south easement that goes around the side of the building. So that would create basically from that access drive on the north side, that easement would allow a straight shot to the south to get around to the south side of the building. One of the other things in the agreement that was approved in 2016 was to look at some site areas on the site that needed to be repaired as far as parking lot goes. Areas 9 and 10 were just some small areas that needed to be filled. Those areas have been completed already. Areas 1 and 2 on the map were areas that were to be overlaid as part of the agreement. Those areas have not been completed yet. But those will be done by the new developer as part of the purchase of this lot. So as far as this area goes, they would be in compliance. There are still some other areas on the mall property that will need to be redone per that agreement. That agreement did expire at the end of December of 2018. They've requested an extension until the end of August to do some of those parking lot repairs on the mall site. But again, all the repairs on what would be this site would be completed. Again, looking at the required landscaping, so this was a landscaping plan that was submitted when that development agreement was approved along with the plat in 2016. It's a little hard to see, but you can see the plan shows installing some parking lot islands near the end of the drive aisles, and then also installing some trees. It also required some trees kind of in front of the building within some existing parking islands. The proposed landscaping plan, they've submitted a proposal for landscaping that does not include installing those parking lot islands or the landscaping within those islands. They will be requesting a waiver to that requirement. And so what they've done is they've provided an alternative landscaping plan which shows plantings along the east side of the property within an existing green space area. They're showing some planters in front of the new building. There will be an area there for planters between the sidewalk and the building. There will be a new green space area just east of the building, which will have a tree and some planters. And then they're showing several other trees at the southeast corner of the building and also some new planter areas. One of the things we're talking with the developer about is resubmitting a more refined, detailed landscaping plan. So this landscaping plan, what we would like to really see is a more detailed plan by a landscape architect, which shows more of the species, the caliper of trees, the number. This is more of just a basic, I mean, we get the idea of what they would like to do and where they want to put it, but we'd really like to see a more refined plan. I've already talked to the potential buyer or the developer of this about getting us a more refined plan to bring forward at the next P&Z meeting. Again, sidewalk, looking at the connectivity with the mall, the building addition would have a sidewalk out in front, which again, since this building will more line up with the front of the mall, the sidewalk then will have an easier connection to the sidewalk that goes along the front of the mall. And then it will also connect in, there's an existing sidewalk that goes along the east side of the existing building, and they will tie that in with the east side of the building to have a walkway connection around the building and then also to the west to the mall. Stormwater management. So this is a fairly old site. There really isn't any detention. You know, it's a mall, it's a large parking area and buildings. So there's no real detention. There are some storm sewer inlets that take the water to the city line over off of Boulder Drive. What the developer is looking at doing, and Karen mentioned this with the River Place plan, is they're looking at adding 2 hydrodynamic separators on this to address stormwater quality. There's not even stormwater quality being addressed on this site right now. It just basically sheet flows across the parking lot into existing outlets and then down into the storm sewer it goes. They're proposing 2 of those, one at the north side of the building and one at the south side. And again, what these do is they collect the water and then it separates out any trash, any debris, any sediment, and then holds it within the structure and then allows the clean water to then go into the storm sewer system and then out into the public system. So we think this is a good plan to address water quality, as it's not even being addressed right now. One of the other things I think they're looking at is to increase that storm sewer piping, which would then allow for some additional capacity to hold that before it goes out into the public system as well. Looking at what they're looking to do at the front of the building, this is an image of what they would look to do with that building addition. So it is one store, but it'll have 3 separate entrances. One would be for the Ashley furniture section, one would be, I think, for their sleep shop, and then another for, I think, a Lazy Boy center. So they are proposing 3 different entrances with signage above. The signage would appear to meet the requirements of the S1 district as far as signage, although that would be reviewed when they submit a sign permit. With the materials, they're looking at doing some higher parapet walls there in front of each of the entrances with some stonework, again with the doors and windows and the metal banding and EIFS material. And I ended up finding this at an existing store that they redeveloped. So this is a real-life picture of just another, this might be their store in Davenport. But again, just wanted to kind of show, similar to what the architectural rendering showed, but this is a finished image of another store that they've redeveloped. So you can see, again, it's got the main entrance in the front, or in the middle, with the 2 separate entrances on each side. So at this time, staff would just like to introduce the site plan, to gather any comments, and continue the discussion on April 10th. Subject to the several stipulations. One, again, resubmittal of a more refined landscaping plan, which again defines what types of plantings are being proposed, whether they're overstory trees, ornamental trees, shrubs, what the species of the planting is, and then the size, what the caliper of the tree is, how many gallons for the shrubs are. And then one of the other things is that stormwater management plan was received by engineering just recently. They're doing their review of it. I want to make sure that's got the approval from engineering. I know they've been working pretty closely with the applicant's engineer on all the stormwater requirements, so we just need them to get their final review of that, and then also any other comments by the commission. So I'll quickly move on then to the plat. Again, so what this image shows on the right is the red dashed line is what they'd be proposing to plat off. It's about 7.9 acres, and it would go all the way to the north to that frontage road, and then would go just south of the building to include a small area of parking, and then it would go all the way to the east, to the eastern property line of the mall. Again, here are what the preliminary and final plats look like. Again, it's showing things that we require on our plats, existing and proposed contours. Again, there's not much really changing with the site because it's an existing paved site with a building on it. They're showing existing and proposed utilities. Many of the utilities are located right in front of the building, and so they'll have to move those just to the north slightly to make room for that building addition. They've been in contact with Cedar Falls Utilities, and it appears the utility relocates should be fairly minor. Existing and proposed easements, again, as I had mentioned, they're looking to relocate that access easement to the north and then realign it at that north-south one to help the better flow of traffic. Again, showing the proposed lot lines and proposed zoning. So it's got most of the information that we require on our plats. Again, talking about the cross-access easement that I mentioned before, I won't get too much into this about how they're showing that on the plat, where they're relocating that easement to. And again, the same thing with the stormwater. They're showing what they're doing with the utilities and showing where those new storm sewer lines are going to run and then where they're going to place those stormwater quality structures, those hydrodynamic separators. So with the plat, staff again looking to introduce this, gather comments, bring it back at the next meeting. There are still some things outstanding with the plat that we would like to see. The first one, provide a description for the relocated access easement on the plat. I've actually had a conversation with our city surveyor. They've made some changes. They've shown the dimensions of that relocated easement on the plat, so I don't think we'll need to get it physically described. Again, review and approval of that final stormwater management report by the engineering division. There's several other things that our plats require: a signed approval of the subdivision name by the county auditor, a title opinion for the property, which is generally submitted by an attorney. One of the things we do want to look at as well is the existing that easements, covenants, and restrictions that was approved with the subdivision plat in 2016. We want to do just a review of that, make sure with this property being split that there's no, if we're going to need to make any amendments or include this lot, we want to review that and just make sure there's no any necessary changes to that. Again, if there's any final corrections to the deed of dedication, and they're supposed to provide 2 signed copies prior to going to city council. Again, 2 signed certificates of survey that are generally required before it goes to city council for approval. And then again, 6 full-size signed copies of the final plat before it goes to council. So some of these are fairly minor and are typical that we require prior to moving them to council, but just wanted to make it known that we're still in need of some of these things. And again, any comments or direction by the P&Z Commission on this item as well.
Great. Thank you, Shane. Is the applicant here? Would like to address the commission at all? Any comments? Please come forward and state your name and address.
My name's Troy Eichman. We live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I'm here with my brother Corey and some other supporters here, Lisa Skubel. And so we're excited to introduce this to you today and take this project forward. We, as I said, I worked closely with the city. The last time we were here in chambers was with the city council, and we got the green light to do the warehouse. As part of that agreement, we also agreed to put a store up in Cedar Falls. And from that time to now, of course, Yonkers has met with the fate that they have. And so that provides us with an opportunity. I'm a second-generation kid working in the business. And so is my brother Corey. We're regularly reminded that we're kids in the business, despite I'm 50 years old. But you know what my folks did, started in 1976, is they embarked on this journey that's part real estate development and part retail. So just briefly a little bit about us. We have nearly 50 furniture stores throughout 6 states, so the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Illinois. And we own all that real estate except 3. And we believe that's one of our secret sauces. That allows us to continue operations even in a time like a Great Recession in 2008, like we experienced, where business went down for all of us. And it's really that long game and that long sight that has allowed us to come here to you guys today to make this proposal. We do view them all as a diamond in the rough. We're excited about the investment that the city's made in University Avenue. And really, that's one of our pillars, is not only do we need the location, but we need the access. And that's a great road. And I know that was probably discussed before we came to visit, but we're really excited about that. So in addition to location, in addition to access, we need visibility. This property sits back a little bit, so we'll probably raise it up some in accordance with whatever we're allowed to do per the building permits. I think it's 49 feet maybe. We probably won't go that high. I think the highest one we've done recently was in Moline. We went 45. But generally, we go about 40 feet up for that center Ashley area. As a licensee of Ashley, obviously, we want to be seen. We do believe this topic of being seen in the trees is a really important one. So, and another pillar, that visibility is a really important question to us, and something that we've been working closely with staff on to be sure we come up with the right balance and the right mix for success. I'll tell you just a short story. We purchased an American furniture store in Davenport, Iowa, on Elmore, if you know that road in Davenport. That business met with a bankruptcy, and we were able to come in and buy that. And it sat similar to this. It sat off the road. And one of the things we worked with in that development, similar to what we're doing here, there were actually 80 large trees planted in front of that development. So you really couldn't see it from the roadway in any angle. We have redeveloped that site consistent with what Shane has shown. And that I'm proud to tell you that property has gone from being a bankrupt property to being one of the top performers in our entire system. So I think that this issue can't be understated about how important it will be, not only for the success of Ashley, but in part we're hitching our wagon to the mall. And what we hope is this is a first step in bringing new capital and new life into the actual mall. And we'll have our money where our mouth is. We'll be putting, obviously, the acquisition, if it's approved. We'll also be bringing $2 million in renovations. That expansion is 15,000 square feet, and we'll have to basically gut the interior of that property and bring it back to life. All of which we're excited to do. The thing I'd just leave you with is that your support has really just been appreciated. Being new into Cedar Falls in the last couple of years, we really just found a great, something that we just really, really enjoy. Our warehouse is doing really great. We've got about 25 people working out there in the warehouse now, and we hope to grow that, and this is a cornerstone to that. So,
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the commission on this item, or items, 2 items actually? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and then bring it to the commission for discussion tonight.
I think it's it's exciting. It's nice to see that you're going to help renovate the mall. The mall, I agree, University Avenue's been a nice improvement. The mall has seen its better days, and it's nice to see someone who wants to invest in the mall. So I think it's a good development.
As we look at this, I know some of the people that have come in to redevelop the mall have closed off that access. We don't plan to do that. We hope this is a first step of many steps that will take some time to bring new life into that. So we'll leave that former Yonkers area open. We'll hope to attract new and energetic business into the mall. Patsy represents the mall here, the NAMDAR organization based out of New York. We do have a relationship with them, and so we're working with them regularly to help bring new life here. So
that's excellent. That was actually one of my questions, was about the connection to the mall, so that's great news. And equally great, I think, are the improvements to the traffic around that outside corner. That's always been kind of confusing.
Yeah. Oh,
Thank you.
Oh, somebody brought it up last time about Tract A. Who is responsible for repair and maintenance of that, which would be the road that goes east-west?
Tract A is owned by College Square Mall, and they are responsible for the maintenance of it. I think at the last council meeting, there was some comments about some of the conditions of the driving lane. It was a pretty tough winter here for, for a lot of people, and we've spoken with Patsy, and they've got already got a plan to try to get some of that fixed up. So, yeah, it would ultimately be the mall's responsibility.
Year in, year out, that is one of the worst roads in Cedar Falls.
You talking about between this property and the outlots?
Yeah.
Okay.
You talked about stormwater quality. Is detention not required?
No. So this, what they're doing is they're addressing the stormwater quality, because anytime you do any sort of additions or anything like that, I think the new ordinance, which was approved, I think, back in 2010, you need to address stormwater quality. But there are certain situations that don't require detention. You got to hit certain thresholds. And so for this project, they're not going to do any detention. They're going to increase their storm sewer piping compared to what's there now, I think, to help increase the capacity that can go through those pipes before it gets released back into the public storm sewer system. But again, they're addressing the stormwater quality, which I think any type of project, no matter what size or scope, is required.
The landscaping on the edges seems a little like a workaround to me. I mean, that's a huge parking lot that needs some relief. And the islands that were proposed initially certainly start to address that. I know there are concerns about visibility, and it seems to me there's a way to do both those things if we're creative about it.
Yeah, that'd be the only thing that I would have concern about is the landscaping, how that comes together. I think it's a great project overall.
Absolutely. Is the development agreement, so this is going to be separated off as a separate lot, right? So, I mean, setbacks and all, that's a zero setback, obviously, and that development agreement will handle all of those kinds of questions and issues about how this building gets separated into two separate properties, right?
Well, I don't think we're proposing a development agreement for this. There's an existing development agreement with the mall that was looking at addressing things like landscaping, the parking lot repairs. I think one of them was to add a sidewalk from that new University Avenue trail to the main mall. So those things are things that they are still working to complete. Back in, I think, 2013, which is the new Hy-Vee, which I think was the old Walmart, was part of the mall as well, and that was subdivided off. So that's a similar situation, just on the other side of the mall building.
So I think with those agreements that are in place between the various entities that own property on the mall, in the mall, that there's a shared access, shared parking.
Cross easements on everything.
And so that's one of the things we want to take a look at, those existing agreements and make sure that they're addressing with the plating issue. So with a shared facility like that, there wouldn't be necessarily the same types of, everybody's got their setbacks from the neighbor, because they are sharing the same building and sharing a lot of the same drives and aisles.
That makes sense. There are some separations, though, that there's some details associated with how that works. So let's just think them through.
Further discussion or questions from the commission?
No, I'm excited to see it happen. Let's do it.
I agree with Leanne. It's exciting to see the building being restored.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. Yep, should be a great project. We'll look forward to seeing this next commission meeting. Is that the plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Like I said, there's a few of the items here that we'll work with the developer on. The meantime, some of these items that we can bring back on the 10th.
So, April 10th, we'll look forward to seeing this again. that completes all of our items of regular business. Any commission updates?
Well, first, before we get to any updates, I just want to make sure we had, I'm not sure the voting machine was counting the right people in the votes, because Hillary's not here tonight. When we recorded those votes before, it was showing one abstention.
Kyle?
Yeah, that's right.
Kyle.
Did you abstain?
Yes, I
Yeah,
did.
Okay, so I want to make sure we got them all recorded correctly, so.
Good. Good to get that right.
So with regard to updates, I just want to mention again that we do have our downtown visioning project that's kicking off next week. We're very excited about that. The consultants will be, oh, look at that. We've got it right there on the screen. There'll be a big public meeting on Tuesday evening from 6 to 8, and you are, of course, all invited and encouraged to come. I think it's important to get that sort of initial presentation by the consultants. It kind of introduces the whole project. I think that will be very interesting. And they're not just planning to give a presentation at that meeting. It will be a workshop, and so I think they're planning some activities with the public, so we'll have tables set up for people to work together. I think they're planning a visual preference exercise, and also an exercise looking at the maps of the study area downtown, and really talking about what everybody's thinking about, starting that conversation about the visioning for downtown. And then that's just the first event. They'll be here for several days, and we have a number of stakeholder meetings that are set up with various groups downtown that are business owners and restaurant owners and retailers, and starting those conversations. And then they'll be returning again in the first week of June for a week-long design workshop with the community. So they'll be taking this initial input that they received for this first trip and then incorporating that into further meetings with the community when they return in June. So anyway, we're very excited about that project, and we really hope that you take the opportunity to attend the meeting on Tuesday evening, and there'll be some further opportunities for the commission to get involved later on as well. So if you have any questions about that process or anything, I'd be happy to answer those for you, or you can contact me at any time.
I have a question. Are there any other opportunities? I'm going to be out of the country next week, and I just wonder if there are any other meetings like that planned.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, in June, they're going to be here for a whole week. So that will really be an intensive, they'll set up a studio downtown. We haven't got the schedule all worked out, but there'll be another community meeting on a Saturday morning, which will hopefully capture some folks that can't come in at an evening time. There'll be a big public workshop then, and there will be additional meetings. We're also thinking about having some lunch and learn sort of opportunities, some brown bag lunches, and so anybody that didn't have a chance to meet with them this time around, there'll be another opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
And then just to add to that, we are currently working on an interactive website, so same activities, hopefully the plan is it'll be at these meetings will be available online, so you can also contribute through those mechanisms as well.
Right.
So we'll keep you posted.
Great. Thank you. Anything else?
That's all we have tonight.
All right, great. Thank you, Karen. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.